Thomas, Senior Pastor of Forest Lake United Methodist Church. Thank you for joining us as we consider this week's lectionary readings. Today, let's talk about Romans chapter 8, verses 1 through 11. There is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. For the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus has set you free from the law of sin and death. For God has done what the law, weakened by the flesh, could not do, by sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh. And to deal with sin, he condemned sin in the flesh, so that the just requirement of the law might be fulfilled in us, who walk not according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. For those who live according to the flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh, but those who live according to the Spirit set their minds on the things of the Spirit. To set the mind on the flesh is death, but to set the mind on the Spirit is life and peace. For this reason, the mind that is set on the flesh is hostile to God. It does not submit to God's law. Indeed, it cannot. And those who are in the flesh cannot please God. But you are not in the flesh. You are in the Spirit, since the Spirit of God dwells in you. Anyone who does not have the Spirit of Christ does not belong to him. But if Christ is in you, though the body is dead because of sin, the Spirit is life because of righteousness. If the Spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead dwells in you, he who raised Christ from the dead will give life to your mortal bodies also, through his Spirit that dwells in you. Years ago, I took a group of Boy Scouts on a weekend competition. When we arrived at the campground, the boys learned that one of the contests included sending a message by Morse code. They were embarrassed that they didn't have a copy of the code, and they spent a good deal of time that night developing their own code. The next day, the person running the competition gave each team a copy of Morse code. My guys decided to stay with their own code, though, that they developed just a few hours earlier. They failed miserably. As we debriefed their experience, I asked why they put their trust in an unproven makeshift code rather than a time-honored and tested Morse code. It seemed like a foolish choice to me. But to be honest, it's a foolish choice that I make far too often. Setting out to do my own thing, my own way, too often I end up with a similar failure. Paul puts a similar choice before us in today's text. We can choose the flesh or the Spirit. In other words, we can do our best in our own strength, or we can put our lives in the hands of the one who created us. Trusting the flesh is relying on our human knowledge and wisdom to choose the best course for our lives, and relying on human willpower to accomplish it. Any of us who have failed at a diet or exercise routine know how unreliable the flesh can be. Trusting the Spirit means relying on what Christ accomplished for us. Christ condemned sin and sets us free. The mind set on the Spirit is life and peace. Let's trust Christ and live in peace.